In the grand, somber symphony of the Kennedy family's tragedies, each low note reverberates with an incomparable pain. From Rosemary's quiet departure, to the poignant loss of Joe Jr., and then the two shocking blows that claimed two presidential brothers, John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy. It seemed this curse had no end. Now, only one son of Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. and Rose Fitzgerald remained. A man who had witnessed these escalating tragedies firsthand. He was Edward M. Ted Kennedy, the youngest scion of the family, burdened not only by personal grief but also by a colossal political legacy and a name that had become both an icon and a haunting specter. Born the youngest child into a family brimming with power and talent, Ted Kennedy always lived beneath the colossal shadow of his extraordinary brothers. Joe Jr. was destined for the presidency. John F. Kennedy actually became president, and Robert F. Kennedy was a passionate attorney general, a highly promising presidential candidate. Ted, with a somewhat more rebellious and fun-loving nature, was initially not burdened by his father with the same political expectations as his older siblings. He was even expelled from Harvard University early in his academic career for cheating on a Spanish exam, an early blemish on his record. But fate compelled him to grow up far too quickly. After Joe Jr.'s death in 1944, and then Kicks in 1948, Ted witnessed his family being torn apart by sorrow. When JFK was assassinated in 1963, and then Bobby in 1968, Ted became the sole surviving son of Joe Sr. and Rose. The entire weight of the Kennedy dynasty, of its unfulfilled dreams and dashed hopes, fell squarely upon his shoulders. He was no longer the carefree, baby brother. He was the last inheritor of a tragic saga. The pressure was immeasurable. He had to step out from the shadows of his lost heroic brothers and bear the immense responsibility of a family that had become a legend steeped in tears and blood. But precisely in his effort to carry this legacy, another tragedy, steeped in controversy, struck, forever haunting his life. Despite lacking the presidential aura of JFK or the sharp acumen of RFK, Ted Kennedy still embarked on a political career. He was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1962. Filling the very seat vacated by his own brother, John F. Kennedy. When he became president, he was a young man, but he quickly proved himself to be a talented and dedicated legislator. Throughout his nearly 50-year career in the Senate, Ted Kennedy became a Lion of the Senate, a legendary lawmaker who fought tirelessly for what he believed was right. He was known as a fervent protector of the poor, the vulnerable, and the voiceless. He was the primary architect of countless landmark pieces of legislation, from healthcare and education reform to civil rights and immigration. He was the force behind the establishment of Medicaid for the poor and Medicare for the elderly, expanding access to healthcare for millions of Americans. He championed equal rights, opposed the Vietnam War, and consistently prioritized the interests of the people. With his exceptional negotiating skills and remarkable perseverance, he overcame numerous political hurdles. leaving behind a monumental legislative legacy that few senators could rival. He didn't just carry on the legacy of his brothers. He forged a powerful and meaningful legacy of his own. However, despite achieving much professional success, Ted Kennedy remained trapped within the shadow of the family's curse. The pain of loss clung to him relentlessly. He was the only surviving brother, and the responsibility of upholding the family became overwhelming. After his father, Joe Sr., suffered a debilitating stroke in 1961, losing the ability to speak, Ted had to step in to care for Rose and manage the family's vast fortune. He witnessed his father, once a man of steel, now reduced to a mere shadow of his former self, living in silence and helplessness. As more tragedies continued to strike his children and grandchildren, losing his brother Joe Jr. in the war, kick in a plane crash, and then John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy so brutally, Ted was the one who had to stand firm, to be the pillar of support for Rose and his nieces and nephews. This burden was an immense psychological pressure, often leading him to seek solace in alcohol. His personal life also faced considerable turmoil, with his first marriage dissolving and persistent rumors of extramarital affairs. Despite a distinguished career, Ted Kennedy's image remained inextricably linked to personal tragedies, and perhaps he always felt he had to live for those who were gone, to compensate for their unfulfilled dreams. This immense pressure reached its peak on one fateful night, a night that would forever alter his life and cast an indelible stain on his name. On July 18, 1969, just over a year after Robert Kennedy's death, a horrifying event occurred that not only shook America but would forever haunt Ted Kennedy's life and career. It was the fateful night on Chappaquiddick Island. That evening, Ted Kennedy, along with some friends and 6 young women who had worked on Robert Kennedy's presidential campaign, attended a small party on Chappaquiddick Island, a tiny island off Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. The party was lively and convivial, a gathering to honor those who had dedicated themselves to Bobby's campaign. One of those women was Mary Jo Kopechne, 28 years old. An intelligent, talented, and promising young woman. Around 11:15 p.m., Ted Kennedy stated that he would drive Mary Jo back to the ferry for Martha's Vineyard. They both left the party in Ted's Oldsmobile Delmont 88. However, instead of driving directly to the ferry landing, Ted Kennedy turned onto a dark, unpaved dirt road leading to Dyke Bridge, a narrow wooden bridge with no guardrails. In the darkness, and likely impaired by alcohol, Ted lost control. His car plunged straight off the bridge, flipped over, and sank into a deep, murky tidal pond. Ted Kennedy somehow managed to escape the submerged car, struggling in the pitch-black night and freezing water. He later recounted that he attempted to dive down multiple times to rescue Mary Jo, but failed. She was trapped inside the sinking car, ultimately drowning. Instead of immediately reporting the accident, Ted Kennedy left the scene. He returned to the party, seeking help from 2 other friends. but did not call the police or emergency services. He then swam across the channel to Martha's Vineyard and returned to his hotel, not reporting the incident until the following morning. The next morning, the car was discovered. Mary Jo Kopechne's body was recovered from the submerged vehicle. And then, the horrific story of that fateful night began to unravel. When the incident was finally reported, Ted Kennedy provided a statement riddled with inconsistencies and lacking detail. He claimed he was dazed and disoriented after the crash, unable to recall events clearly. But the egregious delay in reporting the incident, nearly 10 hours, ignited a firestorm of public outrage and suspicion. Why didn't he report it immediately? What was he doing during those 10 hours? Why did he leave the scene? And why did he take the treacherous dirt road leading to that dangerous bridge when he knew the ferry had ceased operation? The Chappaquiddick incident became a monumental scandal, a national sensation that permanently altered Ted Kennedy's public image. It was not merely a traffic accident. It was an event rife with unanswered questions, ethical dilemmas, and allegations of cover-up. Investigations ensued, and although Ted Kennedy was only convicted of leaving the scene of an accident causing death and received a 2-month suspended sentence, the verdict of public opinion was far harsher. The conflicting details in his testimony, the delay in reporting, and the unexplained circumstances fueled deep suspicions about the true events behind the incident. Journalists, investigators, and the public relentlessly questioned: was someone attempting to conceal the truth? Were there other individuals at the party whose identities were suppressed? Was Ted Kennedy hiding something far greater? The incident irrevocably destroyed Ted Kennedy's presidential aspirations. He was perceived as the last inheritor of the Kennedy legacy. But Chappaquiddick placed a definitive end to that ambition. The image of a future president was now replaced by the haunting specter of a man who abandoned a woman in a sinking car. However, despite being embroiled in the biggest scandal of his career, Ted Kennedy steadfastly remained in the Senate. He endured a difficult period, facing scathing criticism and a profound loss of public trust. He was forced to publicly acknowledge his mistakes and express his profound remorse. But remarkably, he continued to be re-elected. This not only demonstrated the enduring power of the Kennedy name among Massachusetts voters but also showcased Ted's ability to connect with the people, proving his dedication through his relentless legislative work, although the door to the White House was permanently closed to him. Ted Kennedy continued to serve for nearly 40 more years in the Senate, becoming one of the most influential legislators in American history. He strived to atone for his actions by dedicating his life to social issues, championing healthcare, education, and civil rights, becoming a voice of conscience for the Democratic Party. But no matter how many achievements he garnered, the ghost of Chappaquiddick always haunted him, a persistent reminder of that fateful night. It was an indelible stain, a part of the Kennedy curse, that pursued him until the end of his life. The Chappaquiddick incident forever changed Ted Kennedy, and it also stands as the clearest evidence of this family's lingering curse. Though he survived, The price he paid was by no means small. It was the price of a presidential career, of his reputation, and of his peace of mind. Ted Kennedy lived for over 40 years after the Chappaquiddick tragedy, fighting relentlessly in the Senate for the ideals he believed in. He strived to overcome personal mistakes and family tragedies to become a legislative giant in American history. He was the last flame of the most powerful Kennedy generation, one who witnessed and endured it all. His legacy is a complex blend of great achievements, personal tragedy, and a question that will forever remain unanswered. His death in 2009, after a battle with cancer, closed a long and turbulent chapter of the Kennedy family. But has that curse, the tragedy spanning generations, truly ended? Or does it still simmer, waiting for its next victims? In the final video of the Kennedy Curse series, we will look back at this entire journey, from ambitious beginnings to tragic ends, and ponder the haunting power of fate. Join us to learn more about the continuing secrets and tragedies of the Kennedy family, and whether that curse is truly eternal.